So I've just started recording. So this will be live. I'm going to share my screen now so you can see the link where you can access the recording. Let me do that. Okay. Super. Cool. So here we are. There's the link at the bottom of the of the page there. Now, I thought I'd be clever and post a question in the chat. If you've got a minute, it would be really helpful to hear where you're from and how much time you spend on comms a week. It might be nothing. It might be, I'd like to spend time on comms, but actually it's a struggle. I'd love to hear that. Cool. So I think how are we doing here? I think I've managed to admit everyone that's coming through at the moment. Has that chat question come through? Is it? Yeah, cool. Thank you. It's always a bit hard, isn't it? You're never quite sure if it's all working behind the scenes. Cool. Oh, amazing. We have lots of wonderful people here today. Hi, Delaney.
Hi.
Yeah. I hear you. It's still a struggle. Doing it for 3 years. It doesn't get any easier. Oh, Madeline, you'll have more answers than me on this, I suspect. Super. So welcome everyone that's just joined. We're just going to wait. I'll probably give it till 3 and then we'll start the session at 3. If you have a chance to answer that question in the chat, it would be great to hear where you're from and how much time you're spending on comms at the moment. Already we've got all my time and not enough. I suspect we're going to have the full spectrum here today. And just to remind everyone that this session is currently being recorded and will be available afterwards on that smallcharityweek.com link that you see below. Welcome everyone. I shall, a few hours a week. It's what I aim for, a few hours a week. Some weeks it just doesn't happen. Hi, Sarah. Oh, cool. So we've got, it seems like a couple of hours a week is consistent. Hi, Ellen. 6 hours a week. Great. Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends, isn't it, on sort of campaigns and bits and pieces. Hi, Ellie, Michelle, Katie, Sid. Oh, cool. Yeah, it'd be interesting to know sort of how many people are resourced to do this. It's tricky, isn't it? Sort of finding money for this. Hi, Ian, Ellie, Lucy. Oh, great. So we've got some comms experts here. Fabulous. Fabulous, because that is not me. So hopefully in the chat we can have a bit of a discussion and you can share your expertise. All right, I think we'll get going. We've still got a few people kind of popping in and I'll respond to to those and admit them as we go, but time is precious, as you're all alluding to, and as I really wanted to put in the headline of this chat. I'm just going to mute everyone for now. That's not because I don't want to hear from you, absolutely not at all. I do, and please write your comments in the chat as we go. We will have time at the end. Hopefully we'll have a good 15 minutes at the end where we can talk about what's going on, anything that I've chatted about that you want to probe into a wee bit further. But if things sort of strike you as we're going along, then please do stick it in the chat and I'll try and scoop that up at the end. So I wanted to start, why is it not going on? Oh, there we go. All right. I wanted to start really with this photo because I thought this is great. This is when I sort of started doing comms voluntarily about 3 years ago. It was all about social, and all of my time was really spent on social media channels and doing social. We're around social all the time, aren't we? I'm sure all of us are using Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or something in some way, shape or form. But actually doing it professionally for an organization is quite different. I think the very first professional, tweet that I shared out, actually it was a LinkedIn post I think I did for Engage for Success. It took me about 2 hours to pull that together. And that was really an hour spent sort of researching and gathering the content, photos and bits and pieces. But the other hour was agonizing about, am I saying the wrong thing? Have I tagged the right people? Is this message going to land? Like all of that sort of stuff. And I guess the thing I really just want to share, and you'll see this as a recurring theme throughout my session, is that it's hard. I find I'm no comms expert, and it's hard to sort of get this right all the time. And you are not alone. You are not alone in this, if this is your experience. Still, quite often I'll create social posts and I'll think, oh, rats, I forgot to tag that key funder in, or forgot to use that, relevant hashtag or whatever. So yeah, it gets a little bit easier, but it's still certainly there with me. A little bit about me before we go on. I'm a project manager by background. I've done a lot of project management through my whole career in private, public and the charity sector. And I really sort of fell into sort of the comms thing by accident. Comms is always an element of project management, but I'm no comms expert. And I was fortunate enough in my career to always have amazing comms professionals around me who would do all of the kind of core stuff for me. But I learned a few things as we went along, and that's really, what I want to kind of draw on today and share what I learned and how that's helped me with what I do at the Volunteer Centre. Sorry, there's still so many people coming into the session. Can I just double check? Sorry, everyone. My PowerPoint has completely disappeared. I'm just going to unmute everyone. Can people, I'm just going to say, okay. I've said you can unmute yourself. Can everyone still see that PowerPoint? Cool. Okay, great. Just me then. Just me that can't see it. Okay, so yeah, I was just explaining a little bit about my background. I fell into doing comms on a sort of regular basis in the charity sector. During the pandemic, I started volunteering for a national employee engagement charity and was project managing their comms team. So I had anywhere between 3 and 15 comms professionals who were volunteering for us at the time. And yeah, they taught me a huge amount that I've then taken on into what I'm doing at the Volunteer Centre. I joined the Volunteer Centre a couple of years ago, was running a project for them around supported volunteering, and really just noticed that nothing was happening really around comms in any sort of coherent way. And I wanted to change that. So I started doing that on a voluntary basis, and I now freelance with them. So yeah. So let me move on to the next slide. Come on, buddy. I know. Sorry, we're still getting people. The lovely people at Small Charity Week said, do you want a hand running your Zoom session? And I was like, no, I'm all good. But actually it's quite tricky, isn't it? Admitting lots of people and talking and doing your slideshow at the same time. All right. Why are you not? You're not. I'm just going to stop this for a sec and move on to the next slide. Because it does not seem to be working. Okay, all right. Okay, so in today's session, I wanted to cover really 3 things, and we can have a chat about all of this at the end. First one is key messages, how to get team buy-in, and how we measure success at the Volunteer Centre. I'll take you through some really practical examples of that stuff. A little bit about basic tools that I use to help me on a weekly basis. And I have managed to recruit 2 digital comms volunteers in the past year at the Volunteer Centre. So I'll talk a little bit about that and how I went about that in my experience. So I wanted to show you this cartoon because this is really, this is really important to my experience actually working in the small charity space. That so often we can just think that all comms is social media, the tweeting bit, the guy at the end. We've had so much and now we're back to so little. For me, comms is so much bigger than just social media. And actually getting the team to sort of shift their mindset around this has been and continues to be probably one of my biggest challenges here. Yeah, so the first thing that I did when I took over comms was to sit down with the chief exec and really look at our strategy. So what we set out as our vision for the Volunteer Centre, what we were trying to achieve over the next few years, and then come up with 3 key messages. So for me, comms always has to be rooted in value to the organisation. We can't be doing this as an afterthought. We can't be doing this as an add-on. It has to form part of, how we're achieving our strategic objectives. So our 3, oh goodness me, here we go. Our 3 key messages. You can see on the left, I'm more than happy to share this template. You'll see as we go on in the session, this template is my Bible, really. It's what I use all the time. So our 3 key messages for the Volunteer Centre in Greenwich is around being seen as an expert, including everyone in volunteering. It's really the kind of core bread and butter, I guess, of any volunteer centre in the country is we really need to be making volunteering inclusive for every single person. The second one is around people seeing value in our courses and wanting to join them. We have a fairly big training provision as part of our offer in the Volunteer Centre in Greenwich. And it's a contract that we'd love to, to continue. So it's really important to us to get people coming along and joining in our training sessions. And then the third one is around organisations, community groups and charities seeing value in us and using us for training and consultancy. And I would say it was really helpful actually putting this presentation together because that third one is probably something that we really haven't focused on as much as the other 2. So why is it important? Why is it important to have a key message? I think for me, as someone that runs comms, I basically spend about 2 hours a week for the Volunteer Centre doing comms is I have no time, and I really, really have to prioritize what I'm doing. So this week's Learning Disability Awareness Week. So given we run a supported volunteering program, which is all around helping people with learning disabilities into volunteering, it's a no-brainer. That was going to be top of my to-do list, to create content around that and push out comms around that. So, it's helpful, really helpful to have your key messages to help you, figure out where you're going to spend your precious amount of resource. We did a big campaign earlier this year around training, and I'll drill into that in a minute. The second reason why it's really important to have key messages is really the second point I'm going to talk to around team buy-in. You'll see there's lots of question marks in this picture here, and I've left those in very deliberately because we haven't had a chance to sit down with the whole team and really, as a team, sort of figure out our audience, figure out our channels, figure out sort of what success looks like around each of these three key messages. And it's not something that I can do alone, and I don't want to do it alone because it's not me that drives a lot of the comms through the organisation. It's the team. We've got, I think, 6 paid staff in our team, and it's really integral that they are heavily involved in this. A number of them have been in the organisation for over 10 years. I've been there for 2 years. I just don't know our audience well enough. I don't know our channels well enough. So it's really important, I think, to get your team involved in your key message. And it's something that we'll do at some point, but like most small charities, actually getting the 6 of us, or the team together around the table has been difficult. What else did I want to say around that? Yeah, so yes, and the measuring success bit I'll come into in a bit more detail on the next slide. Actually, I think that's probably more helpful. So if I go back and drill into people seeing value in our courses and want to join them, we could just push this stuff out on social media. We could just, tell people that we're running a safeguarding workshop next week, and we could do that usual sort of stuff that we've been doing for a while. Or we could sort of sit back and think about this differently. So last year, we had a number of courses we had to cancel at short notice because we didn't have the minimum number of people to run it. And so we took this opportunity at the start of the year to really sit down with the team and think, well, how could we be doing this differently? How could we be thinking about what we're saying around our training courses differently? So we got the whole team together, had a bit of a brainstorm, and we came up with 3 ideas, really 3 things that we wanted to focus on as a staff team. And again, this is back to getting team buy-in, like you have to involve people around the table because they're ultimately the ones that are going to be taking this stuff forward. The first idea was making it easier for people to book on. So I think what we'd found is that, sometimes people would contact us, they had to fill in a lengthy sort of form, they couldn't attach it, the attachment got lost. There were lots of just very practical things about people actually being able to book on the courses that we could make a little bit easier. So we did that by, and I apologize, the stuff's a wee bit small, but in that bottom right corner, you can see book the workshop. So very, very simply, we just loaded all of our courses onto the website. We gave every single course its own little page, and we created a bookable link with an MS form on there that people could fill in online, and that dumped into the training administrators inbox. It simplified things and made it a lot easier, a lot less time for the training administrator to be going back and forward. It it also meant that it was much easier for her to send reminder emails. So that was something that she kind of came up with. You know, I could be sending stuff out, reminding people. We also had some, put in some wording in the email around, you know, the cost to running these courses, because they're all free, they're community workshops, they're funded by a local council. You know, sometimes people weren't aware that, you know, their spot was really costing us and the council money. So we just did a little bit to tighten that stuff up, and it was all really led by our training administrator and our training manager. We also thought about how we could show people having fun on our training courses. That was sort of a lot of the feedback we get is that they're really enjoyable courses to come along to. People often make friends, you know, at the courses, and there's a really great atmosphere that our trainers create. And so we did a bit of video, we did some photos around that, and really just tried to show sort of how much fun people were having when they were coming along and attending those courses. The council also created a couple of videos for us where people talked about the value of the training that they were doing and helping people sort of move forward in a career path or onto a next step as well, which was really helpful. We pulled out quotes from the evaluation forms, and we started using that in our social media as well. So this is all stuff, you know, some of it was ideas that I'd come up with, but mainly it was the team that came up with this. And I think that's really, really important that, you know, the team sort of is coming up with this stuff. And then the third thing we did was thinking about some targeted marketing. So I don't know if you can see there, but one of the courses we run is dementia awareness. So thinking, for example, about what organisations in the community could really benefit from a dementia awareness training course, and then targeting them specifically with this information. So as I say, I mean, this, you know, although I was sort of behind the initiative, it was all really done by the team. It was the team, you know, who came up with these ideas. It was the team that implemented this. And that is, you know, for I think running any sort of comms in a small charity, that's the utopia. You know, I cannot advocate enough that this stuff really ideally is owned by people, you know, right across the charity. And I'll talk a little bit at the end actually about how your volunteers can also be part of this as well. Yeah, we also, I mean, just to sort of round that out, we also now have comms as a standing item on our monthly team meeting. And I do a lot really around just finding positive stories. You know, we've been picked up by some key influencers in Greenwich, and our messages have been shared out by them. We've had some great feedback around what we've been doing around comms, and just sharing that with the team, you know, because it's back to that point I made at the start. It's hard. It's really hard, I think, to kind of keep the momentum and the consistency and, you know, and the effort required to get sort of regular posting and messaging happening. So any sort of, you know, nice quick wins or positive feedback or anything I can share with the team, you know, I try to do that to keep our spirits up. And just on that sort of last point around measuring success, I haven't done a full evaluation of this training campaign that we ran in, it was March, April time yet, but already this year we've seen we've barely had to cancel a course, and a number of our courses are oversubscribed. So it's had a really positive impact for us. There's always more we can be doing. You know, there are some courses that we're running that you know, numbers are still a little bit low, but yeah, it's a good starting point. And it's always work in progress, isn't it? I think, you know, whenever we do comms, it's always sort of work in progress. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was just some of the tools that I use on a regular basis. We'll start with the fun stuff. I think it's always important to start with the fun stuff. this is the stuff I love. You know, I spend quite a bit of my time on Canva. Hopefully most of you are familiar with Canva. It's completely free. And I just have a bit of fun. We play around, you know, create flyers. I've made videos on Canva before. I'm doing infographics on there at the moment. And yeah, this is the bit that I really enjoy about comms is we just get to have a little bit of fun. If I am using stock images, I'll use Pixabay. I try to use people, you know, doing things in the real world, but if I have to use stock images. And then I'm sure a number of you are familiar with Joe at the Third Sector Network. He runs some great sessions around comms, you know, for small charities. Media Trust are also amazing for that stuff. That's Hal Reynolds in the bottom right corner there in the big yellow newsletter. It's just a newsletter that drops into my inbox every 2 or 3 weeks. And I mean, you can see there from the title, procrastination, a crash and a cat on a bus. You know, it's just, it's silliness and nonsense. And I think, you know, we can learn from what other people are doing in the sector. And that's amazing, but we also need to just keep having fun with this. So yes, that's my go-to for, you know, having a bit of a laugh. Excuse me, apologies. This is really the tool. I didn't want to start with this because it's like, you know, oh, how boring, it's an Excel spreadsheet. But this is really the tool that I dip into every single week. So when I sit down to do a couple of hours on comms for the Volunteer Centre, this will be the first document that I open. It's my one-stop shop. It's just one spreadsheet, and you can see at the bottom, I've highlighted in red, there's a number of different tabs, which I'll go through. The key messages are at the top of it there, so that, you know, I should always be thinking key messages when I'm doing content. The Directory of Social Change, you'll see there, has got a really useful Charity Awareness Day calendar. So that's just a way of staying on top of what campaigns are coming up. I mentioned it was Learning Disability Awareness Week. We've recently just had Volunteers Week, Mental Health Week. There's always something going on, and just thinking about what's coming up, and then, you know, identifying where you want to run campaigns around this is really helpful. And then you'll see there in May, well, conveniently, we were pushing different small charities in Greenwich and the volunteer roles that they had live. And so I'll just make a note of what I'm going to target each week. Usually it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Actually, that last week, the 29th, I had hoped to do some stuff around environmental charities. It just didn't happen. So this is not, you know, by any stretch me sort of showing you the, you know, top class sort of version of what's going on here. So going into some of these tabs, one of them is tools for the team. So I've just got a bunch of different links that I've found really helpful when I'm thinking about creating content or creating posts or video or whatever. I really, really, really want the team to use this. That is a total work in progress. You know, where I'm, you know, I think there's a danger, isn't there, of kind of like, oh, great, Jess does the comms. I don't, you know, I don't need to do anything. But hopefully, as the example before showed you around the training initiative, that it's instrumental. You know, if the team's not engaged in it, then we just can't do as much, and it's just not as effective, and we're just not as effective at achieving our overall organizational objectives. So I'm really big on making it super, super simple for the team. We've got this one spreadsheet that tells them what you know we're up to, what we're talking about in comms at any point in time. And I have one drive, I have one folder of stock photos, and I have one folder of case studies, and that's basically it. The next, the next one, this is enormously helpful. This has really helped me out. So I spent a few hours sort of when I started doing comms for VCG, just really thinking about all the charities that sort of live in Greenwich and finding them on Facebook or Twitter and getting their hashtags, because or their @ signs, because actually this can be a wee bit tricky. Like often you think, oh, I'll just type the name of the charity in, and then it doesn't come up, because it's like, you know, so our council is Royal_Greenwich, but if you type in Royal Borough of Greenwich, it comes up with nothing. You have to know it's a Royal_ in order for it to come up. So this I find really, really helpful, and it just reminds us to put a mention or a hashtag on any kind of posts that we're sharing. And then analytics, this go back to that measuring success point I was making earlier. Again, I try to keep this super, super simple. I only do this once a quarter, so you can see I need to do it. We're at the end of June, and I need to do it for the last 3 months. And all I really look at is who's stopped in and checked out our page or our profile on Twitter and Facebook. Twitter and Facebook are really the only 2 channels we're using with any kind of regularity. And that's fine. That's all we've got capacity for at the moment. One of the team is really keen to do some Instagram reels. So, you know, we'll chip away at that. We started working on that probably about 6 months ago, and, you know, we'll get there at some point. It all kind of rests on how much time she has, how much time I have. And then the other metric I look at is engagement. So ideally, we're aiming for 10% engagement on a post that we do. Twitter is very, very difficult to get anything like that. It's more like 2–3%. But for Facebook, sometimes we hit it, most often we don't. It's aspirational. Yeah, and then ideally in this, we'd have, you know, take up rate of training. We'd have, we do a monthly newsletter out to all our volunteers. We'd have an open rate on that, and we'd have our Google Analytics on our website looking at how many people hit on the page to sign up for volunteering and how many new registrations we get each month. But, you know, all of this requires the team's involvement, because different people in the team are responsible for different systems. And yeah, so, you know, again, it's aspirational. The last thing I wanted to point out here before we go into our final section is just that January to March highlights at the bottom. Again, I just trying to keep morale in the team up around, you know, around the importance of comms, and sort of thinking about how it really helps them achieve their objectives in their job role, is just finding examples of where key influencers have picked us up, or where we've had a fantastic sort of response rate. We've had lots of likes, or, you know, we've had great engagement, or, you know, yeah, whatever. I try to find sort of some good news stories and share that out with the team as often as I can. Okay. I see lots of things coming through in the chat. So hopefully, cool. Thank you for answering the question there. Yeah, so if you do have any questions that, you know, are occurring as I'm going through, please drop them in the chat, and I'll start there after I finish this section. So the final thing that I wanted to talk to you about was digital comms volunteers. We're the Volunteer Centre. We're always thinking about how we can engage volunteers in different sort of roles within charities. And this is something I've been thinking about for quite a while. And it's absolutely a work in progress. I think there's real potential in the sector here actually for thinking cleverly about training up volunteers around digital comms and then matching them out with small charities. And it's something that I'm super excited about. But my experience is that no one's going to come sort of going, oh yeah, I really want to be a digital comms volunteer, because what is that, right? You know, similarly for social media, comms, any of that kind of stuff. So the 2 people that I work with at the moment who volunteer for me. The first one, I met her at a job fair. We got chatting. I found out that she was an artist by background. I talked a little bit about what I do on Canva, and she liked the sound of it. She'd never come across Canva, but she was excited, and she sort of knew that, you know, as an artist, the sort of that kind of digital media stuff was something that she did want to learn and get involved in. So she came on board, and she's been doing some infographics for us, and she's working on an induction PowerPoint that we want to use. We have about sort of 50, 60 odd volunteers that volunteer for us in the Volunteer Centre. Yeah, so she's working on that at the moment. The other person, he came to me, he just wanted to volunteer. He didn't really know what he wanted to do. And at the time, I was doing a quarterly newsletter for people with learning disabilities in Greenwich, and it took up quite a lot of my time. And I asked if he wanted to do it. He was up for it. So I've been supporting him with that, and he now pretty much runs that. So I think that's the first thing I'd say is it's tricky to, you know, kind of create a job description and share it out, or you know, and assume that people will want to come forward. I think we really have to sell digital comms to people, and I think it's an exciting space. I think there's plenty of jobs in this space down the line, and there's certainly plenty of students who are looking to get a bit of work experience. So, you know, they can be enormously valuable assets if we can bring them in. So yeah, and the other point I wanted to make about the digital comms volunteers is I think we're incredibly lucky. We now have so many drag and drop tools that people can use. So the newsletter that Tom's making is all through MailerLite. So I sat down with him at the start and said, look, this is what I've been doing, but you know, you go for it, you have a play around, you see what you want to include. And he can just, you know, learn as he goes. And it doesn't require me sitting down next to him and talking to him about it and taking him through sort of step by step. So I think we're very fortunate. We've got lots of amazing online tools that people can just sort of intuitively figure out how to use with minimal input from us. Just to finish, and I appreciate it's 33 minutes past, so if I can just very, very quickly run through sort of what I've seen different charities using around digital comms volunteers, because there's a few different models out there. One is the kind of free reign, you know, you have your spreadsheet of monthly content, and volunteers come in and they scoop that up and they create whatever they want to create, and they have direct access to posting. I use that model at Engage for Success, but my volunteers were all comms professionals. So, you know, it worked for that audience. They knew sort of what they were doing. The other model is, there was a charity in Greenwich I was speaking to recently. They use university students. Again, they have a sort of spreadsheet, you know, weekly content that they want to go out. They have a weekly phone call with the volunteer to talk it through, and then they have a sign-off process at the end of it. Volunteers can also be used as community moderators. I'm sure lots of you have got experience perhaps around that, you know, volunteers who are jumping into Facebook community spaces and engaging people in conversation. And then the final one, which I think is super, super exciting, and sort of I wanted to end on this, is the work that London Lifelines are doing at the moment. And this is really thinking about how we empower all of our volunteers to be active content creators. So giving them the tools to create their own video around what they're up to and why volunteering is amazing, and, you know, what their journey is, and whatever it is, the message that you want to hear from your volunteers, and tooling them up with the knowledge to create good quality video that you then just repurpose. So they were running a webinar this week exactly on this topic. Their website is well worth a look if you're looking at engaging your volunteers more around content creation. Yeah, it's you know, reasonably straightforward, and you know, you'll get some volunteers who'll be up for it, you know, others that won't want to touch it with a barge pole, but it certainly can make your life a lot easier. So I wanted to finish there. We've got, well, how are we doing for time? We've got about 14 minutes. No, we've got about let's say 10 minutes for questions and bits and pieces. Let me just go in. I'm going to stop the share and unmute everyone. And then, yeah, if you've got questions, I will start. So allow participants to unmute themselves. All right. So you can unmute yourself if you've got a question. Let me dive into the chat and see. Yeah, thank you, Lucy. Canva Pro is free. Something that we could all be using. We have no budget. So Vanessa, your question about what a reasonable ad budget would be, we've never spent any money on adverts. Cool. If anyone's got any questions, feel free. Madeline.
Hello. Consultant. I work with charities of all shapes and sizes on their comms. I did a bit of work with a small charity recently who had similarly very little time to look at their comms, and they were kind of tearing their hairs out thinking they should do all these things and we should do so much more. And they worked out that they spent, I think, a quarter of their time putting out their newsletter, and they were frustrated about how people weren't really reading it. And we kind of dug into the stats a bit more and actually realized that it was really well thought about in terms of their comms portfolio. And actually it was worth the quarter of their time that they were putting into it. So it was a valuable kind of insight to look into that data to understand that actually, although it was very time consuming, it was a real kind of shop window for them, and it was worth kind of investing in the time. And we were just looking about how to streamline certain things so they're not doing kind of processes over and over. So in the same way that you looked at your kind of key messages, I think it's really useful to look at that streamlining and look at the processes you can put in to make things easier. Something else that I always tell clients is also about scheduling. So you can schedule posts for the week ahead. So sit down on a Monday morning and schedule posts in throughout the week rather than kind of doing it as and when. And that can be quite time saving as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Madeline. Yeah, I it's interesting. I don't use scheduling at all. I think it's a total pain in the backside. if I'm honest, because often the functionality that I need just isn't there when I create posts to sort of schedule, but maybe I should pick up with you after. Perhaps there's something I'm doing wrong.
Something that has recently really improved with Meta Business Suite. So it's only Facebook and Instagram, but the tagging, which I agree is one of the most frustrating things about social media and particularly scheduling, because if you're live, you can just do it. But Meta Business Suite has really improved that because it brings up a list of the possible things you might be tagging, and it generally works. Unlike the later and buffer, I just find a hit and miss with the tagging. But yeah, then you still have to do Twitter separately. So
that's really helpful to know. I haven't dug into any of the changes around the Facebook, Meta Business stuff. Yeah, Hootsuite.
I was just going to say, I find that planner that where you can actually see on a calendar really useful in Facebook in Meta Business Suite. I keep changing the names, but you can actually look at your content, but then you can see it on a weekly planner, everything you've got scheduled in on Facebook and Instagram. And it's really useful because you can just see where if you need to squeeze something in, and it just gives you that nice visual. So it is that's one of the few things I will credit Facebook for making a good improvement, because I don't like most of their changes, but that's a good one. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, you know, like there's a whole thing, isn't there, about kind of really digging in and understanding the, you know, analytics around Twitter, and, you know, which they've very helpfully hidden now, haven't they? Sort of, you've got to go through 3 layers to try and dig out any of that sort of stuff. I find for the Volunteer Centre, it's the biggest thing really is just getting the team to understand that, you know, comms is so much more than social media. It's just, yeah, that's definitely been my biggest challenge over the past 12 months. I don't know if anyone else has got any sort of thoughts or comments or similar or completely different challenges that they're seeing in their charity.
I think I had the same issue as in a couple of months back. We had a staff day, and they were like commenting on what everyone had done that year, and it was, well, thank you know, the social media and the newsletter is amazing, thanks, moved on. And I'm like, that's it's that I need to, and made me realize how much I need to work on internal comms in terms of promoting what comms is, and it's like I hadn't quite realized that's all people saw. And I was like, well, I support local charities with their, you know, with advice of their comms. We, you know, obviously there's all the website management to go with it, there's all the design, there's supporting every project we work on, supporting our core services. And it was just okay. And I thought, right, okay, that's actually part of my review this year, that I've set myself the challenge to promote myself, and myself, since I'm a team of one, internally, and get that buy-in from staff. I mean, they are great, but I think people just don't, so everyone's so busy, they don't really think, it just happens. I think sometimes if you do a job well, people don't realize what you're doing. Sometimes to your own detriment.
Yeah, and it's a real, you know, I really, you know, I do completely get it. It's a culture change, you know, to really sort of embed this sort of, you know, thinking, I think particularly around sort of evidence for impact statements and funding bids, and just sort of almost building that into the kind of front end of any process that you're doing. You know, how are we getting stories out of this initiative or experience, or whatever it is that we're doing, that can then add value to us as a charity moving forwards, and not sort of seeing as an entirely separate process. Yeah, it's a work in progress.
I'm feeling really privileged being full-time as comms, which is quite a recent development. I think my charity, I'm really lucky, is really invested in it, and I'm really lucky to have good buy-in from my team. But I'm very impressed with your spreadsheet. It makes me think that I have absolutely no excuse not to be tracking all my metrics regularly, because even being full-time, I still get bogged down in the doing, like the live reactions, and then actually there's no point unless you're going back and seeing what's working, and you're not putting your energy in the right places. So I am inspired by your spreadsheet.
Well, yeah, the couple of metrics that we track, but thank you, Lucy. Yeah, and I think this is sort of what I really suspect I'm a bit of a broken record to the team on this, but it's like, well, you know, we're not going to break anything. We just try things out and we see what works, and then we kind of go back to the drawing board and, you know, and do it again. You know, there are a whole range of things that I had up my sleeve to do for Volunteers Week. You know, I did a whole video piece that was going to feature at the start of one of our big in-person and volunteer events, and never got used. You know, it's tricky. It's really tricky, you know, and I think if I reflect back on that, that was because I did it in a format that wasn't in PowerPoint. And so the sort of confidence of the team to sort of take something and embed it, and, you know, like, I think often it can break down at very, very simple, basic levels. And I think, you know, in my experience, I've got to start with where the team is and what they feel confident and comfortable doing, and then just gradually build that confidence. You know, I certainly didn't start with any comms expertise at all, but, you know, over the years, I've just sort of learned as I've gone along. Any tips on, let me go up to the topic too, because a few people have asked questions. Thank you, Abby. Recruiting digital trustees. I would go to Media Trust. Media Trust, that's a big part of what they do. They recruit, or I don't quite know how their model works, but they work with a lot of industry professionals in this space, and then they match those industry professionals with charities and mentor them in, you know, various ways, shapes and forms. So I definitely look up Media Trust for that. If other people have got good ideas, please drop them in the chat or unmute. Any tips on how to grow Twitter followers without spending money? I hand over to the comms experts in the room. I think the thing that's been really valuable for us is going small, like finding your key influencers in your space. So for us, we're quite lucky, isn't it? We're in Greenwich. So like just geographically, you know, you can almost eyeball people that are active on Twitter, and just finding out who your really active tweeters are within your community, and then thinking about how you almost post to sort of get them to retweet, and then you've just got a much broader reach, would be my only suggestion.
There is lists, which I find really useful in Twitter. So you can make your own lists of other charities that do similar things to you, corporates that you might want to work with, because Twitter is like shouting in a dark room and everything lasts 15 seconds. So with the lists, it means you can sort of curate the conversations you want to be part of. And how you pick up followers, I find on Twitter, is by joining conversations rather than just posting out into the ether.
Thank you, Lucy. It's a really good point. Yeah, we do too much pushing, isn't it? And it's a really good point, actually, is jumping into conversations and thinking, how can we add value here? I'm not, Vanessa, I'm sorry, I'm not sure about that. From Just Giving, why do you want to grow the number of followers? So Caitlin has asked a question, why do you want to grow the number of followers? Is it going to help you make an impact? Yeah, you're saying ask the question, isn't it? Yeah, don't just assume. And you'll see there, you know, the metrics I track. I don't care about followers. I'm not interested in how many followers we have. For me, I just want people to be looking at our profile and engaging in our posts. That's all I really care about at the moment. You know, that might change in 6 months, but at the moment. Yes, charity hour, 8 to 9 o'clock on a Wednesday. Last night is really, really helpful. Cool. Well, we're running out of time. I think this session was really only booked for 45 minutes. I'm happy to stay on if anyone's got any other questions, but just before we go, I just wanted to ping up the PowerPoint again, because I think, you know, in my experience, that it's quite a lonely space being in this small charity, you know, when we're really doing it with next to no resource and we're just sort of trying to figure it all out as we go along. So I wanted to suggest, if anyone would like to meet up on Zoom again, drop me an email and I can try and create another sort of session. You know, I would love to meet anyone that's working in this space and just really kind of tearing your hair out about, like, oh, you know, I'm trying to do these infographics and the tool's not working, or not even sure what tool to use, or whatever the question is. Please drop me an email and I'll look to create another group, because I think, yeah, it can be a lonely space at times. I often spend a lot of my time looking at other charities and thinking how amazing their socials are and how rubbish it is. So yeah, do get in touch. Yeah, so Michelle Charity, I mean, Ellen sort of explains, but it's just there's a number of hashtags where they just kind of curate certain people with interest areas to come together and talk about a common issue. So I think last night's chat was all around sort of issues facing small charities, given it's Small Charity Week, and you just get a whole different range of people all having a chat at the same time. Cool. So just to say thank you very much, everyone, for your kind words. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to have a chat. Do drop me an email if you've got any other questions. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to follow me there, or follow us, Volunteer Centre Greenwich, on Twitter and Facebook. Yeah, that's us. Good luck with your comms journey and your small charity. I wish you all the very best, and it's an exciting space to be in at the moment, doing comms. Yeah, with so many really user-friendly tools out there. But yes, the more that we can learn and share off each other, then hopefully the easier it will be. And yeah, if there's anyone in particular that's sort of interested in this digital comms, like volunteer piece, then do please get in touch, because as I say, it's something that I'm super passionate about. How can we kind of tool up more volunteers in this space to help small charities? Cool. Okay. Any other final questions before I sign off on the session? I'll just put my no. Okay. There's my email as well, just in case anyone missed it on the PowerPoint. Super. Well, thank you all very much for giving up your time. Michaela's coming with a question after you reach the 500 on MailChimp. Oh, I love MailerLite. I don't know. It's actually a good question. I'm sure MailerLite's got a similar threshold, but I use MailerLite for all my email marketing. MailerLite, yeah. Pay. So actually, I mean, I don't know if this is helpful or not, but yeah, I use one of the newsletters just as a URL. I don't actually use it as a database, so I just copy and paste the URL into an email rather than using it as a database function. So then it's like unlimited. You can send it to however many people as you want. But of course, you've then got the GDPR. Yeah, good point. What do I then use for my database? So this is for our learning disability community in Greenwich. So the scope is a little bit smaller, I suspect, than what you're talking about. But I then have a spreadsheet. I'm a lover of the spreadsheets. I just have a spreadsheet that tracks all of the people that have signed up. Signed up to receive it, and then I just always say in the email, if you don't want to receive this, you know, let me know, and then I take them off the spreadsheet. But cool. Okay. All right. If there's no other question, I suspect that wasn't particularly helpful, Michaela. Yeah, if there's no other questions, I will sign off. Lovely to see you all. Thank you for joining. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Take care.